Hey, folks, welcome to another edition of the Processing Blue podcast. I'm Panthers beat writer Mike Kaye, looking like I have a special glow about me if you're watching the video version of this wonderful podcast. I'm joined by fellow Panthers beat reporter Alex Zietlow, and we are here in week 16 where the Panthers are 3-11, about to go up against a up and down Arizona Cardinals team. They just lost perhaps their most disappointing loss of the season, given the expectations. But I'm really happy to see Alex, as I always am. Alex, how you doing today?
I'm good. I would be remiss to say that I think I've officially forfeited my title as the dude with the script when it comes to the Panthers. I mean, I started out the season so well when it comes to predicting these guys' win-losses. And also, I was pretty spot on with the scores as well, I'd like to say. I predicted that when Andy Dalton came in, they were going to really surprise people and beat the Raiders. I knew that they were going to lose to the Bengals even when the Bengals were reeling. I was like, okay, I know this team. I know exactly what's going on. And then this past week, and then also with the Philadelphia Eagles, I said they're going to lose, but they're going to feel good about the loss. Like this is like the Panthers are going to feel better than the Eagles will about their win. And then this past week happened, and I predicted the Panthers will score 40 points and that they're finally going to break through and get this win. And not only a win, like a pretty dominant win, and the offense was going to look great. And instead, Bryce Young turned the ball over 4 times, and like you basically had your story written at the buzzer by the beginning of the fourth quarter. So I think I must officially relinquish my title. I did not, in fact, have the NFL script, and it's disappointing. It hurts.
Well,
It's still a better record than Mike Kaye, though.
Well, as Han Solo once told Luke Skywalker after he shot down a TIE fighter in Star Wars, don't get cocky, kid. Anyway, you still haven't seen Tombstone, so you basically don't know anything. But moving on, speaking of Cowboys, ooh, that worked out well. I didn't even plan that. Speaking of Cowboys, the Cowboys have played much better of late, but they were still a team that was struggling mightily. They had a backup quarterback, albeit Cooper Rush has gone 8-4 now in his career starts for the Cowboys. They had a running game that was averaging 92 yards per game. Oh, wait, then you run into the Panthers' run defense, and they put up 211 rushing yards. Bryce Young turned the ball over 4 times. That you're never going to win when you turn the ball over 4 times, especially with a defense like this. And Xavier Legette suffered a groin injury. We're not sure if he's going to play against Arizona. Dave Canales hinted that it's not likely. And then they lost number 3 linebacker for the last several weeks, Claude Cherilus, to a toe injury that's going to need surgery, as the Observer first reported. Not a fun afternoon for the boys in Process Blue. Alex, what was your biggest takeaway from this game?
Well, I tend to look on the offensive side of the ball, and the offensive line just didn't hold up against this Cowboys defense. 10 quarterback hits, 6 sacks, both of which I'm pretty sure are season highs. If you look at the PFF grades for all of the offensive linemen, they're all pretty bad. Cade Mays surprisingly had a pretty good day pass blocking at 75.2 grade, which is not bad. Struggled against the run at 50.9, but to me, there were a couple really ill-timed false start penalties that he suffered at the center position. Ike Ekwonu had a rough day as a pass blocker. We don't need to highlight too much of that, as fans got after him pretty hard yesterday, at least in my mentions. He finished 4 pass blocking grade on PFF, which must be a season low. Taylor Moton did okay. Damian Lewis kind of struggled as a pass blocker. Robert Hunt was predictably pretty solid. The thing that I always come back to when the offensive line struggles, particularly when they have an uncharacteristically bad day, is you look at the play calling. And I'm sure that this is where your analytical mind is going. Of the 55 offensive plays the Panthers ran, 42 were called passes, and then 13 were called runs. I think you told me yesterday they only had 3 designed runs in the first half.
Second.
3? A second half, excuse me. Like that's brutal. That's difficult to like as an offensive line, particularly when you're going against a generational talent in Micah Parsons, who already lifts up the rest of that pass rush. It's very difficult to do. And it's very difficult to block against that. I asked Dave Canales yesterday, with hindsight being 2020, do you regret not having more designed runs, particularly in that second half? And he said he wrestled with it, but ultimately that the team needed to get going, and he had to be fair to the guys who still wanted to compete and still wanted to win the game. But I mean, to be fair, the Panthers had the ball to start the second half, down 10-7, and everything was like, okay, what's gonna happen? Then Bryce fumbles the first play of the game, and the Cowboys go up to at least a 2-touchdown lead within like the first 9 minutes of the second half, and that was basically all she wrote. And then Bryce threw another interception to truly seal the game. So I guess just to wrap up my point, the offensive line play was uncharacteristically bad. It was strange how bad it was. But then when you kind of bring it in the context of the play calling, you can kind of understand it more. Still, though, the Panthers should not have been blown out by these Dallas Cowboys, man. That they shouldn't have.
Well, here's the thing. It was a tale of two halves. I actually thought the play calling was fine in the first half. I really did. I think it was an execution issue. If Bryce Young doesn't fumble on that first drive, they're probably, in the same position they are after being gifted that fumble and then the 83-yard touchdown to Jalen Coker. Let's take the first half out. They lost this game in the second half. The fumble to start the third quarter, obviously abysmal. That leads to a touchdown. Then they get a 3-and-out. Leads to another touchdown for the Cowboys. And that was basically when they had to abandon the run. I would have run the ball more anyway, just because that's really what's worked for you. This was a bad run defense they were going up against on the season, and they got bailed out. Micah Parsons just basically pinned his ears back and said, you know what? I don't care what's called. I'm going to rush the passer. I'm going to get a sack. And so I think, look, Ickey had 2 sacks allowed. Damian Lewis had 2 sacks allowed. Robert Hunt allowed a sack. Taylor Moton allowed his first sack of the season. Like, everybody deserves fault there in the pass protection. But like you said, from a play calling standpoint, like, they were constantly going to shotgun. There were times where they had minimal yards to gain and were going away from the line of scrimmage in that shotgun stance. There was one play in particular, they were down by, 17 points at the goal line, basically, and running out of shotgun. And it was just kind of like, well, you're just creating more of an issue for you, especially with the way they were playing. I think, Canales, for the first time, it felt like was really outcoached in the second half. And that's going to happen. You're a first-year head coach. It just, Mike Zimmer's a really good defensive coordinator. I think they schemed them up pretty well. I think they had some really exotic pressure packages. I think they give the Cowboys credit. I think they came in with a great game plan and it worked. Defensively, this safety group needs to be completely reworked. I'm a big Xavier Woods guy, but like outside of him and bringing him back maybe on a 1-year deal, Jordan Fuller has struggled a lot in coverage. Nick Scott shouldn't even be playing on defense. Neither should Sam Franklin. I don't care about the interception last year. That's been his one good defensive play he's made probably in 5 years. They need to retool this safety group, and all 4 of those guys are going to be free agents. I would like to see more Damani Richardson because he can actually tackle. And I know that sounds brutal, but like, as much as the front 7 gets criticized for its run stopping ability, pass coverage, the safeties always seem to have either a communication error, or just get beaten coverage. I mean, Woods and Fuller at least gave up 1 touchdown each in that game, and you could argue Woods was partially responsible for the one that Mike Jackson gave up. So I think the pass defense overall has improved, and I think Mike Jackson's been a more than serviceable number 2 corner, but that was rough. And then, of course, the run defense. I mean, like, this was Rico Dowd's third straight 100-yard game. That was impressive. But, like, this team can't tackle, and I'm almost tired of asking the question, because you have to ask the question with respect and be polite, but it's like, how many times can you hear technique and fundamentals and whatever? I promise you, I've been watching football long enough. You don't need to be talented to know how to tackle. That's just not like a thing in the NFL. Like, from a technique standpoint and from a fit standpoint, like, you interviewed Deshaun Robinson the other day, and he basically was like, the chemistry's off. The chemistry's been off all season, man. Like, we constantly give them the benefit of the doubt. You know, they lost their best player in week 1, Derek Brown. They lost Shaq Thompson in the first month of the season. Like, that's a lot. Don't get me wrong, but it's week 6. I mean, it's week 15. Like, what? Like, at some point, it's coaching. And, you know, moving on. Look, the Panthers lost that game. Whatever. A lot of people were disappointed. All three of us, including Scott, picked the Panthers. I don't think we need to bask in the glow of anxiety and woe. But, you know, moving on, let's talk about our 2 favorite topics every week. And you and I typically kind of agree on one of them, and the other one we kind of go back and forth. So let's talk about Bryce, okay? To have more than 4 turnovers, the ball security issues, the throw judgment. I mean, it's funny to say, but I feel like outside of those turnovers, he had a relatively okay game. I don't think he was good by any stretch of the imagination. Dave Canales has already come out and said he's going to play against Arizona. That's the right decision. I think we both agree on that. He is 4-21 as a starter. Brutal. I do think if you watched the Chicago Bears play the Vikings last night, I think that was indicative of what CJ Stroud would have looked like had he been in this operation last year. That said, I still think Bryce deserves, you know, to close out the season. I still think there's room for optimism. But the reality is, you are what your record is. And as a starter, he is 4-21. This team has won 5 games in the last 2 years. I think their problems go well beyond the quarterback position, but where are you at with Bryce?
Another important stat to consider when you take the totality of Bryce's season: 8 touchdowns, 9 interceptions at this point. He came into this past week at 7-7. I'm still a team. Yeah, Bryce is going to should be the guy in 2025. He deserves that. It's funny that you say that he played okay outside of his 4 turnovers, because I kind of felt that too. I mean, those 4
turnovers are like a barbell placed to your leg as you're falling off like a boat. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But like, he proved that he can do what we have seen him do. The 2 like great things about Bryce's game. One, he can execute script, like a beginning of game script. He's very good at that. He even proved that when he was struggling against the Broncos, or like the whole game he struggled, but like that first drive, that was a good first drive. So he proved that he could do that. The other thing that Bryce can do very well is he kind of becomes this like superpower-ish guy when the team is down by less than 7 points in the 4th quarter, and he can put together a remarkable drive. He can shrug off defensive linemen and have his undershirt ripped off, and he can just like be the superhero. Okay, that's cool. He never got the chance to do that against Cowboys, because the middle of the game, which is not just the middle, it's like the overwhelming bulk of the game, he struggles with consistency, and that's not good enough. You're not going to win games in the NFL. However, the beginning and the end show enough to me where he should be the guy, not the franchise guy necessarily, but he should be the starter in 2025. And look, I mean, like, it's strange to say, but this is kind of the prevailing narrative coming out of the game. Like, it's weird to say that the Panthers needed to be humbled a little bit after 3 straight losses, but I think they kind of did. I think they were kind of reading the news clippings. I think they were reading Moral Victory Mike. I'm just kidding. But like Moral Victory Alex too, and was just like, oh, okay, well, maybe if we play at this level against like middling to mediocre teams in the NFL, we're gonna come away with some wins, and that's just not true. You got to be solid. You got to have the margin for error for y'all is still not great. And one final point. I find that teams with opportunistic defenses and explosive offenses always play up to their competition or play down to their competition. If you have a good offense, you can stay in contest with really good teams. If you have a bad defense, you're going to stay in every contest with bad teams. So I think that was shown against the Cowboys, and the offense, instead of being really good, decided to give the ball away 4 times, and that's the result that you got.
Yeah, you touched on
we can move on from the Cowboys as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what else to say about it.
Well, I think you made a really good point about Bryce. He's kind of like a deli sandwich quarterback, okay? So let me explain. You know, a deli sandwich with really good bread can draw you in, right? But if what's in that deli sandwich doesn't taste good, you're not going to have an oversatisfying experience. I for one don't like tuna, but I really like bread. So, if let's say we got like a nice like seeded bread, but there's tuna inside, I'm not going to enjoy my experience, right? So Bryce has kind of been that way this year. I think sometimes the stats look better because he's getting more opportunities in the first and fourth quarters. But I think for him, you want to avoid being a shh sandwich. You know what I mean? Like, that's really what you want to avoid. It's one thing to just eat because you're hungry. It's another thing to just be bad. And I think he's been able to avoid that sandwich since he's been back in the lineup. I mean, the first 2 weeks that was rough. But I think this was the closest thing to week 1 and week 2 for a lot of elements of this team. And I think they've been, I don't want to say humbled, but I want to say they've been made very aware of what their station is in the NFL. And I think they really need to bounce back against the Cardinals. One, so they can either live up to your preseason prediction or my preseason prediction, but also the Arizona Cardinals to me strike me as a paper tiger. So do the Falcons. And if they can win those 2 and finish with five wins, I think this season ends with the sense of some sort of success. But the defense has to stop somebody. And so that's the other thing I want to get into. You and I want to get this out of the way because I don't want to waste a lot of time. Like an opposing running game that leaks the clock. You and I both think that Ejiro Evero is a very smart defensive mind. We think he's a good coach. We think he is a very capable defensive coordinator. He proved that in Denver in 2022 and in Carolina last year. The past defense has played marginally better, if not markedly better, over the last 6 or so weeks. I just can't get over how horrific this run defense is. And I don't think that he is on the hot seat based on what the conversations that I've had. And I don't want this to be taken as a report because it's not a report, but my sense is, at this point, if you're Canales and Evero, do you see a mutual parting of the ways as like a way to go here? I mean, most assistant coaches have 2-year contracts. I just don't look, the talent's not there. I'm not hating on that, but I just this is a historically bad run defense. I'm not one of those guys that's like the 3-4 is terrible against the run. That's not true. There are good 3-4 defenses that play well against the run. a myth. That's like going with what you know, because the 3-4 defenses here have been terrible against the run. But I think there are going to be people available that might have a similar mindset to Canales. You're shaking your head like no, and that's fine. And I'm not saying they should move on from him, but if I were Evero, maybe I'd want a change of scenery. I mean, you know, I don't expect him to get a head coaching job after this year. You know, and Robert Saleh lingers out there. Clint Hurt is with the Eagles right now, and they're doing really, really well. To bring in a guy who could potentially be coming off a Super Bowl could be enticing. He also has a relationship with Canales. Todd Wash, the defensive line coach, while that unit hasn't been terrific, has a defensive coordinator background. He'd also probably be more inclined to run more of a Seattle-esque defense, Pete Carroll style, 4-3 under. I just think like it's going to be tough to sell this as like a, hey, everybody's back sort of thing. And maybe that means that some assistants are gone or whatever, but where are you at, Alex? Because I want you to poke holes in the idea. If you are very adamant about this, tell me why you think that Evero should want to stay, and B, should be welcomed back.
Well, the question of should he want to stay is a compelling one, and quite frankly,
that's all I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying that he is incredible. I can tell you this. You can quote me on this. He is incredibly well respected in that building. Incredibly well respected.
Oh yeah.
But there is the idea that he was given, you know, he had a bunch of things taken away this year. Yes, they gave him a bunch of guys who he's familiar with to make him happy. A lot of us thought he might get a head coaching job, even though, you know, the Panthers basically walked off the plank. But this is a guy who's also been passed over twice for this head coaching job, and been match made with Frank Reich, who was an absolute disaster, and Dave Canales, who's still kind of figuring things out. Human nature says, you know, I've watched offenses take my defense and put my defense in terrible positions multiple years. I was one of the biggest head coaching candidates in the league. Maybe it might be better off for me to do it. This is not a report. This is not based on anything I'm hearing. This is you and I speculating here. But human nature would say, maybe this ain't it. Go ahead.
And yeah, no, that's important context, and I can't wait for aggregators to get you on this one, Mike. I don't know. It is a interesting question. I just keep and maybe I'm overemphasizing this in my head, but I just keep coming back to Dave Canales' introductory press conference where he literally says, we ask him about, hey, is EJ going to remain as defensive coordinator? Because that was still up in the air at that point. And he goes, and Dave says something to the effect of, yeah, that is like critical to the plan, or like I need him as part of my dream team. And I know a lot has happened since that introductory press conference. You know, Dave said Bryce is the guy, and then 2 weeks later he benches him. And then, you know, a whole bunch of sliding door moments happen. Andy Dalton gets in a car wreck. Is somehow the only thing that gets hurt on him is his right thumb. And so Bryce comes back into play. I know a lot of things have happened since then, but I don't know. I mean, and you also listed out a lot of like really great candidates out there who are looking for an NFL job, maybe a defensive coordinator job, among them Robert Saleh, who has a really robust history and a good friendship with Dave. I'm just still, I just still really can't see the Panthers agreeing to let him walk without him saying something like you're kind of speculating of, hey, it's time for me to move on. It's time for me to find a different home. I mean, the rush offense has been, or the rush defense has been truly remarkably bad. They're last in the league in opponent rushes per game. They're last in the league in opponent rush yards per game. I think they're like either 28th or 29th. I don't have it right in front of me, in opponent rushing touchdowns per game. Everything about the rush defense is bad. Can we take some solace in the fact that the pass defense has been not like terribly awful?
No, but here's what I would say though. part of those numbers, and I said this last year, part of the reason why those passing numbers aren't high is because teams are playing with leads and getting to the run.
Yeah.
Let me add something to this. Part of the reason why, if I were Evero, I might consider wanting to leave. Last year, the offense averaged 13.9 points per game. Okay? This year, they averaged 17.6 points per game. They are 31st in total offense, 24th in rushing offense, and 29 in passing offense. That typically means the defense is on the field a lot. They're tired. They're getting run over. They're constantly allowing running backs to rev up. When you're in a situation like this, how much longer can you let your resume take the hit? Because frankly, the offense isn't setting the defense up for success. Dave Canales constantly talks about playing complementary football. Well, guess what? Part of that is the offense not weekly setting the defense up for disaster. That said, the offense has played remarkably better the last 6 weeks. But if you were a defensive coordinator who was on the cusp of potentially a head coaching job, you've interviewed for a ton of them, perhaps it makes sense to dock your boat at another station, is all I'm saying. Again, this is speculation.
Yeah. What's the alternative, though, Mike? Like, is the alternative, and this is...
There are going to be a lot of open gigs. And, the new way of doing this stuff is if Evero goes with a first-year head coach and he's the defensive coordinator, he's the head coach of the defense, he knows what it's like to work with a tenured head coach, he knows what it's like to work with a young head coach, he's worked with Sean McVay. If you look out and you see the personnel that fits your defense, I mean, I don't know, because here's the thing. This year they've got to totally revamp the defense with talent, but they also really do need to touch up some of the offensive points. Like, it's not like the offense is solved. They're averaging basically 18 points a game, right? So you say to yourself, like, are they going to double down on Bryce or are they going to triple down on Bryce and cater to his needs and draft an offense player with that top 10 pick? Or are they going to go for Abdul Carter or, Mason Graham or whomever and help me out here and then spend money and not go all out on a wide receiver? Like, that's like the thing that if I were a defensive coordinator and I was the agent of, EJ, I would say to myself, like, maybe this isn't working. That said, if you mutually part ways, you're not firing him. The organization doesn't look like they're completely just making a rash move. There's stuff like that. I get into more of this in the Panthers mailbag. You guys can check it out on charlotteobserver.com. We probably should get into the Cardinals a little bit. Do you got any more points before we move on?
I just had one layperson question. So, as I understand it, it is like, if EJ Evero wants to maintain his job as the Panthers defensive coordinator, but also wants to take interviews as a defensive coordinator in other teams, Dave Tepper essentially has to rubber stamp that and be like, yeah, that's cool. You can go interview with other teams. If Dave has proven, Dave Tepper, not Dave Canales, he has proven that even if he doesn't plan on like keeping a Chris Tabor of last year as special teams coordinator, he's still not going to allow him to interview another special teams coordinator.
And he was heavily criticized for that, by the way.
Okay. So, but my point is like, Evero basically has to be like, it is better for my career to not be employed as a coordinator at all to get another chance as a defense.
You wouldn't say that. I think there needs to be a conversation after the season. What is the direction? It's similar to like a director leaving for creative differences. Like, I think it's probably better than 50% chance that he is back. I'm just saying, like, if I were him, I would say to myself, like, looking at this situation, do I really want to potentially put another year of my career behind the 8-ball? Because they do need to improve this offense, and rightfully so. I mean, obviously, I don't think he's a particularly selfish person, but I'm just saying, like, at some point, it's very clear this run defense is not going to be solved. I don't think that Shaq Thompson's going to be back. Derek Brown's going to have to come back from injury. Who knows how that's going to work? The safety group needs to be completely reworked. They've got to make a decision on if they want to extend J.C. Horn, who's been durable this year. Inside linebacker needs some TLC, probably from a backup standpoint. Their pass rushers need work. Like, this is not an easy like overnight fix or over off season fix, and I think that's kind of where we are. We're running a little bit longer because we don't have Zach in our ear. We're joined by the wonderful Diamond, who is our fill-in producer for this one. But let's move on to the Cardinals. Let's talk about them a little bit. They're coming into this game, as like a middling team. They're trying to make the playoffs under Jonathan Gannon. They're 7-7. I'll get this off the bat. I am not a Jonathan Gannon guy. I don't. I think he's a good defensive coordinator. I don't see the appeal as a head coach. I think they're paper tiger-ish. Drew Petzing, their offense coordinator, is actually the brother of like the assistant to the assistant offensive line coach. I believe, or am I totally? Hold on, give me one.
No, man, if you're going assistant to assistant, bro, like I don't know. I mean,
yeah, I mean, Drew's done a nice job at Tyler, is all I'm saying. So I think Kyler Murray's numbers are particularly like astonishing, but you also have to consider who he has on this roster outside of, James Conner at running back, who is a ground and pound Chuba Hubbard-esque player where he's going to pick up 4 yards and run through you, and it's going to hurt. And then, obviously, he's got Marvin Harrison Jr., who is a baller. He's not putting up, like, Malik Neighbors numbers, but also that offense kind of been helter-skelter, and he's got 7 touchdowns on the year. So it's not like, he's got almost 800 yards. He's doing pretty well. Mike Wilson's their de facto number 2 wide receiver. I think that's a good matchup. Or not Mike Jackson, Mike Wilson is going up against Mike Jackson probably for most of the game. I know it doesn't follow the scheme, but I would have JC move around with Harrison. And so, this is an interesting matchup. Their offensive line isn't particularly amazing, but, the Panthers need to show that they can get to the quarterback. Defensively, they've got a lot of athletic guys. Let's go over the numbers, though.
Okay.
So offensively, they rank 11th in the league. They're 7th in rushing, obviously. When you have a big running back like they do, they're able to pick up yardage. 21st in passing offense, even though that's, I still think they're playing probably better than their stats. They've got a 22.4 points per game outlook on offense. Defensively, they're 16th in total defense. 18th against the run, 18th against the pass, and they're allowing 21.9 points per game. I mean, the Cardinals are clearly better than the Panthers, but I think if there was like a time for a bounce back, the Cardinals are a good matchup. It's going to be cold. They're a dome team. They're coming from the West Coast. Sometimes, like, I make this joke all the time. Like, I forget the NFC West exists unless I'm covering a game that they're playing in, or if it's like a primetime game, because you just like, it's the East Coast bias, I guess. But what's your outlook on this game against the Cardinals, just knowing what they've done this year, and do you think the Panthers have a shot?
I do think the Panthers have a shot, but before I get into why, I do want to say one quick thing. So when Mike was kind of fumbling about trying to figure out who the assistant to the assistant to the assistant coach was, there is a joke among Observer writers and really the Observer sports desk of Mike it's a wonderful thing. It's a very endearing thing, but he is like very much into who is an assistant coach. Like, he's very into swing tackles. If you ever see me tweet about 21 personnel, like that, this is what this guy Mike is about. Like, he is football, nitty gritty football.
But I'm not a football guy. Just as certain.
What do you mean?
Well, as certain shills and team spokesmen.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
But man, I really hope I get a text message. I really do.
But anyway, back to my prediction per se. I can't precisely remember what I said a couple weeks ago when we mapped out the final 6 games of the season. I think I did actually. I think I know what happened. I had the Panthers beating the Cowboys and the Panthers winning their final two games, and that the Cardinals would actually win this game.
Yeah, and I had the opposite. I had the beating the Cowboys, beating the Cardinals, losing to Tampa Bay, and then beating Atlanta.
Yeah, so I'm gonna flip the Cowboys and the Cardinals game. Strangely, I do think the Panthers needed to be humbled a little bit.
I agree.
And I do think that there's a possibility. My eyes, I mean, it's kind of a broken record, but my eyes always go to the turnover margin, which is really important. The Cardinals do have one takeaway a game, which isn't great, but like it's I'm pretty sure it's better than the Panthers. And then I also look at third down conversion. They're the third down defense. The Cardinals have the 30th third down conversion defense in the league. They allow 44.58% of conversions. That should spell success for this Panthers team, assuming that they hold on to the ball. And prior to the Cowboys game, there's really no reason why we should think Bryce Young should turn the ball over, because he was playing pretty much mistake-free football. And when Bryce is playing mistake-free football, even when he isn't magnificent in the middle of the game, the games are always close, or the games are normally close, because you can stay on schedule. You can give the ball to Chuba Hubbard, the guy you extended, the future of your offense. Like, you can do these things, and when you turn the ball over, you can't. I'm going to say that the Panthers win a close one against the Cardinals for those reasons. Mike, do you agree with me, or are you going against me?
I agree with you, but only because this week really feels like the Green Bay week last year. Like, right? Like, late in the season, feels like they need something, feels like they need a Bryce showing. Now, obviously, they didn't win that game, but I think the Cardinals are worse, obviously, than the Packers were last year. I know their defense was bad last year, whatever. But yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think this is one of those ones where, like, it was set up for them to win last week, and they completely, dutied the bed. And so I think this is a children's show.
Yeah, I know, and you did a good job censoring yourself earlier as well with the sandwich. But anyway,
I want to predict like something wild, like 27-26. Like, this game's going to come within a field goal. I think this is an Eddie Pinheiro special. And boy, does he need one as he heads into free agency. But anyway, with that said, Alex, send us out, and then we'll go from there. And I hope you guys enjoy your pre-Christmas, pre-holiday season week. Alex, send us off.
And one just administrative.
Oh, right, yeah.
Mike, you want to handle it?
Yeah, so next week, we're going to give you a break from my raspy, annoying voice. We've got people on vacation, because Zach likes his leisure. And
don't do my guy like that. He's
Diamond and I have kids, and Alex
of separate ways.
Alex has to help deliver. Alex has to help deliver toys with Santa, and so we're gonna take the week off from the Processing Blue podcast. We will make it up for you, down the road. Maybe we'll hit you up with a twice the week, the week after the season, just because I've got to soak in all the Alex time I can. But yeah, so next week, if we're not in your ears, it's because we have taken a 1 week hiatus. That I will be in Tampa, we will be in Atlanta. We're not taking off completely, but we figured Wednesday on Christmas, you've got better things to do probably than listen to my annoying voice. So with that said, Alex, go for it.
Thanks, as always, for listening to our pontifications on all things Panthers with Mike Kaye and myself, and our producer today, Diamond Vences, filling in wonderfully for Zach Dennis. Please subscribe and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts by searching Processing Blue. And if you watch us on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever new episodes drop. And finally, please be sure to stick to CharlotteObserver.com for all your Panthers needs. Mike, stay humble, stay jolly, and keep processing.
That's a wrap, Diamond.